Brandon, we're gonna go ahead and start the webinar as soon as YouTube is up and live.
Yes. Oh, guys, yeah, like, thank you. It's nice.
Is there anything else I need to do?
Huh?
Is there anything else I need to do?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why this is not.
And then it's a lot, and it's fine for I don't know if there's hours.
I think that's fine.
Their function is okay. 1, 2. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll say. Alex, I don't know if Nelly is going to get back and then later.
I put it much. Put it on.
I would love to thank you for the hard
Yes, I will be
Yes.
Okay, so we got straight into YouTube, we got people out there. We started our webinar, so we're good. Thank you for doing that.
Happy to be here. So you're both gonna come the same time?
Yes. Yes. I'm so excited. We have our apartment set up and I sent the guy an email just to give me nice and it's like and we got flights. We've been at our bought everything. Just like yeah, we got it. We're good. I'm a moderator. Right? Yeah, it's just kind of like she has nothing to do. She got.
Nelly and Alex.
Yeah. You're not the Alex first. Yeah.
No, I'm not starting.
Invited me to go to this all the time.
Are you ready now? Yep, I'm ready. Okay. Good afternoon, relatives, friends. Welcome to our Indigenous Futures Global Goals meeting with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals to Indigenous Leadership. So before we begin, I want to take a moment of silence. One of our uh, partner organizations, had a sudden death, and so that's why one of our families will not be here today. So let's just take a moment of silence. So I also want to honor and acknowledge the indigenous peoples whose lands we are on in New York. So the lineage of not being people and the indigenous nations around the world leading the way toward a sustainable future. So today our guiding question is, how do we achieve sustainability when indigenous peoples remain excluded from decision making? We'll hear from three incredible speakers who bring perspectives from community organizing, union advocacy, and indigenous law. Together we'll explore how indigenous leadership not only aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but surpass them. And then after the presentations, we'll open the audience questions and end with a collective call to action. And so we are presenting this as a webinar, so we do have some virtual attendees. And I just want to thank everybody for attending here. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Alexander Easdale, Executive Director of the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. Alex will share how regional networks across the Southeast are building collective climate power, how resourcing models can strengthen indigenous-led solutions while linking to the global SDG agenda, and other items that Alex is going to talk about. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Crystal. Very happy to be here. Presentation?
Oh, wait, 1 second, sorry, this is where it's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, next slide. All right, so before I get into that, my name is Alex Easdale, or Alexander Easdale. I'm originally from the country of Argentina. I'm an immigrant to the United States. My mom is American, but grew up in Argentina. And we migrated to Florida. My dad worked in the sugar industry for many years. I went to school here, went to grad school in Miami, worked for the Argentine government for a spell, traveled throughout Latin America and elsewhere. And doing consulting work a few years ago, I landed a contract with the US Climate Action Network to manage this burgeoning southern network of environmental groups. Actually, Shanta was in the steering committee when I joined that project. And at the time, it was a 6-month consulting contract. I wasn't expecting much to come out of it. I was not part of the climate movement. I had no idea how terrifying what we're facing is, but it is the existential threat that we're facing as a planet. So in any case, SEN, the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, or SEN, was founded in 2008 by USCAN, focusing on creating strategic alignment, growing capacity, and building power among member organizations and communities in the Southeast. Our vision is that the Southeastern US is a leading region for just, equitable, and inclusive solutions to the climate crisis, and our values, and these are the values, by the way, that all of our entire membership has to adhere to when they join the network: justice, equity, community, integrity, impact, and you read it correctly, fun. All right, so, and some of my staff, grant documents started to change that to joy, and I'm like, no, it's fun. Because we realize that while this work is very heavy, whenever we get together as a network, we have just a lot of fun together. And even though we don't agree on everything, we find ways to have constructive dialogues. Next slide. Oops. All right, I'm going to read a little bit of this, not all of it. The Southeast is the frontline region for climate impacts and inequities in this country. It is the most under-resourced and the most climate vulnerable region in the US. High vulnerability to hurricanes, flooding, extreme heat, and energy insecurity. I live in South Florida, so extreme heat is a thing, and it is killing people across the globe. Underinvestment in grassroots-led climate solutions compared to other US regions. Disproportionate impact on low-income communities and communities of color, and in rural areas especially. Next slide. So we're a trusted regional partner, largest climate justice network in the Southeast. We have a footprint in 11 Southeastern states, from Virginia all the way to Arkansas, Louisiana, and everything in between. And we have a burgeoning network or footprint in Puerto Rico. I've been there earlier this year, been there several times over the past few years, and we're about to get some more members in Puerto Rico as well. Our network is equity driven and member led. So we don't make major decisions without the buy-in and the leadership of our members. And we have localized action with national and global influence, including participating in climate weeks and the past 4 COPs, what have you. Very, very important to point out, over 60% of our members are grassroots organizations with budgets under $250,000. 53 are BIPOC led, and over 70% are women and LGBTQ plus led. Next slide. So we have a working group. We used to have an environmental justice working group, a faith working group, and an energy working group, and we had different groups kind of participating together but not interacting. So we scrapped that a few years ago, and we have one working group, and the whole network participates in it, and that increased in engagement by 95%. 77 individuals joined our in-person annual meeting, which happened in Miami this year. Last year was in Memphis. The year before that was in Jackson. It's always in the Southeast. We did one in Florence, South Carolina. They have been featured in our convenings. Bella was in our Miami convening, and I think you loved it, right? It was awesome. Anyways, it was our biggest to yet. We had over half of our membership present at that convening, actually 75%. And we have raised and re-granted over $1 million to our members. So we're a small organization that manages this network, but we managed to fundraise to re-grant to our members, whether it's through projects or just to provide some of our grassroots members some money. Those are our benefits, and let's go past that. All right, over 15,000 households received disaster support across 3 states in response to Hurricane Helene and Milton. So let me give a little background there. We haven't really been in the disaster preparedness and disaster response game, but last year, when Hurricane Milton went all the way up to the Carolinas and Eastern Tennessee and what have you, had humongous impacts, there was a lot of loss of life and property. Our deputy director, Amy Adams, is actually in North Carolina. Most of our staff are in that region. And we had a call to action, and we leveraged members like Appalachian Voices and others and their networks and their funding networks and our own funders. We raised about $120,000 in about 2 weeks. And we re-granted all of that directly to groups on the ground, like Democracy Green, Hood Huggers, also Footprint Project out of New Orleans. And we got money out into the communities immediately to provide medicines, to provide diapers, to provide whatever support people needed. And we actually saved lives. We had a major impact. So as a result of that, we're actually building out a program to see how we can do decarbonized responses to natural disasters, because clearly this administration has signaled that they're not interested in doing any of that anymore. Next slide. Stay there. There's some pictures of our beautiful team and members. Next slide. Some of the projects filmed in the field, we funded documentaries for several of our members. One of those, Healing People, Heal the Planet, which is led by Aham Education. I actually premiered at the Dubai COP a few years ago. We did a tour. We went to 7 different communities and provided each host organization $10,000 grant, and then we went there to amplify the work they're doing. One of them, Mississippi, was building a community garden. Several others were doing disaster response work, and we filmed it all, and we have also a film of that, which we've shared with a lot of stakeholders. Gulf South Mobilization Hub is a new initiative that's funded by Mosaic Momentum. We provide technical assistance and capacity building to grassroots organizations in 4 states: Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, to help them grant write and raise money. It was initially going to be to help raise money from IRA funding, but that's for the moment off the table. So we're trying to help them raise money from other sources. Next slide. And we have a podcast. I'm going to do a call to action here. Everybody, please, wherever you get your podcast, look up the podcast, Climate Justice Y'all.
I love it.
And these 2 young ladies here, that's Marisha Malcolm. She's the daughter of Reverend Michael Malcolm. I just saw her yesterday, actually. She's presently living in Nigeria. And that's Abigail Franks, who was initially an intern 5 years ago and is now our senior membership and policy manager. Brilliant. So Reverend Michael Malcolm and I, when we first launched this idea to have a podcast, GASP is another organization out of Birmingham, that the Greater Alliance to Stop Pollution. They're also a partner. Anyways, we decided instead of us talking and interviewing folks, why don't we give somebody else the opportunity? And it was one of the best decisions we made because they're both actually better than we would have been. So 11,600 downloads or 5,500 downloads, maybe more, 5 episodes, and we've done that with a shoestring budget. Huh? Oh, and you don't need to go back to the slide, but we did a review of who listens to us, and we're actually listened to and followed in every continent, except for Antarctica. All right, investing is, that's a fundraising pitch, so we'll hit next unless you're a funder, you can talk to me afterwards. Yeah, so anyways, thank you, so we work with PD Indian tribe, the Gullah Geechee, 7 Directions of Service. Taproot Earth is another member of ours that works with the Indigenous community. I acknowledge coming here that we need to step it up and engage more Indigenous community. Jason and I just talked outside about maybe him connecting us to Miccosukee, which is in the same community where I live in South Florida. But I think, one of the things that I read is that 0.5% of philanthropic dollars go to Indigenous communities. So that's half of 1%. That's a complete and total joke. Indigenous folks across the hemisphere, or across the world actually, are in right relationship with land and resources. They live in a space of balance and reciprocity with the earth and elevate solutions that are based on natural systems to address climate change. When we do this work, it needs to be centered in following the leadership of Indigenous people and giving space in their work and organization and our movements. So I'm not here today to tell anybody, especially Indigenous folks, what to do. We're here, and in our network, what we try to do is we try to follow the grassroots and support their leadership and whatever it is that they need, but they need to lead the fight. And we need to support them with the resources and everything else that they need. And I couldn't say that we need to double down. I couldn't say enough that we need to do that definitely for Indigenous folks, not only in the United States, but in my home country and throughout Latin America and elsewhere.
Oh my gosh, thanks.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. It brings us back to when we first came in and met you through, Io. Remember we went down to Charlotte? And I think it was, do you have the meeting in Charlotte? One of your.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
22.
yeah, that's where we met you guys, and we decided that we needed to be part of the network, so we joined. So we were glad we did.
We did, and you were active participants in the UN Water Conference. I think
Yeah.
it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And we had an Indigenous nation from Honduras was there,
Yeah.
and a lady from Cameroon as well. And we had a really deep dive into what water means for Indigenous communities. And I remember moderating that panel, and then Jason did his thing, which was always awesome.
yeah, he's always awesome. But thank you so much for grounding us in solidarity, because yes, we do need to elevate our voices all across the world, but showing how local movements connect to the global goals. So thank you so much. And I do know you have to leave, so I don't know when you have to step out, but thank you so much for honoring your time, because I really think it's important to show the Southeast where environmental injustice started, and the movement started. It's so important to highlight the Southeast, because we really don't get any recognition. So thank you for doing that.
No, you're welcome. And I'm supposed to go right now to one of those reception things, one of those fancy reception things that I get invited to. But I'm gonna be fashionably late.
Okay.
I'm gonna stick around a little bit and listen to y'all,
Okay.
hear what y'all have to say, and then
Appreciate
I'll leave
that.
in a little bit.
Okay.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you so much. So next, we have Jason. He is stepping in because we had Brendan. But like I said earlier, there was a tragic passing of a Indigenous Environmental Network member. And so Jason is going to step in and talk about just defending water, land, and food systems, and how intergenerational responsibility and traditional ecological knowledge shape Indigenous futures. Okay.
Ushtali, Dakoki, thanks be to the Creator first, and however you believe or understand that to be. Alito, Chima Chukma, Yakoki Ishto, Achatasia, Oglasia, Anitasia, Matushkasia, Sahuchifot, Jason Nitahacho, Sahuchifot, Ogla Itushka. The first thing, I gotta be totally vulnerable and authentic with you and tell you that I am not a friend of two bears. And It's not so much the individual, it's the indigenous principle that we understand and we see that the matrilineal matriarchal power right now and responsibility around the globe is our warrior women in the indigenous communities. And so I understand that Brenda had to leave. The sister that we just learned of their transition or their crossing is our sister as well. And if there's any way that I can honor them, having to change their plans and leave at a moment's notice in this tragedy, the least I could do is sit here and fill her space. But I'm being quite upfront. I am not the frontline warrior women that are doing what's necessary in this time in our history, in our timeline, in our resistance. I am, however, frontline simply because that's how we got into this resistance. As most indigenous communities get into this resistance, it's because of a very real, close threat to air, water, people, health, right up front of your community. And so my wife and I stepped up to fight one project close to 10 years ago that was going to affect the water and the groundwater. Our tribal lands all on well water, so it was going to affect our wells, our plants, our animals, our peoples. And we stepped up and we called like one of those big green companies. I think it was Sierra.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, the big bully's coming. You guys got to do something about this. Isn't that what you do? And they said, not really exactly how we do it. We find people within the community that are willing to alert the community. And before you know it, my wife and I were going door to door. We're having, living room meetings, fire, sacred fire meetings, discussing with the community. Within a year, we had black, brown, indigenous, poor, white, greater community solidified in an effort. And the best success, I'd like to tell you, we had success in defeating that project completely. The success my wife did have is they rerouted from her tribal community. And so to me, that's a historic win, if for no one else but the peoples of our community. So they rerouted it and tried to go somewhere else and pick on another vulnerable community that was not indigenous, thinking that we would be satisfied, as I guess some of communities that fight these things get satisfied. It's not my backyard, it's not my problem anymore. And my wife and I actually went and took the fight, started organizing that community, and we're still engaged with that one project, but then two others popped up. It's like we beat them at something, and they said, okay, we're gonna give them the win, we're not gonna bully this tribal community anymore, but we can't let them think they're really winning, so we're gonna put 3 in the state. We're fighting 3 different projects in the state. Human rights violations in there, environmental justice, racial injustice. So it ended up putting us into the nation, which got us to the UN. And then our first international resistance was in Dubai 2 years ago at the Conference of Parties. I'm just explaining this background to let you know that my wife and I were just a couple raising like 7 children, 2 jobs and a side hustle. She was making beads. We were vending at powwows and working 2 jobs between us. And now we've created a nonprofit so that we don't get attacked, which we still do, but legally it's the nonprofit that gets attacked and we're just agents of it. And these are all just different strategies that we had to find out and learn about. And so when I think about some of the global indigenous allies we've met, and it's different, just like on these lands, indigenous peoples are not monolithic. We have different cultures, different beliefs, different stories. And yet at this time, we're all finding out, as far as Africa, Australia, Asia, that this thing is going on, where there's a small population in all these countries profiting, benefiting. There's a large population just getting kind of dumped on, and as they're dumping on it, causing us health problems from the drinking water, the air quality, the soil quality, they're taking away those health benefits that actually don't heal us, but just kind of treat us. So we're like literally dying at this expediency. So greater measures must be taken. So what's the greatest measures for our peoples that existed with the least possible impact on their environment and their territory for thousands and thousands of years? What would that be? Go back to what we only remember. Sometimes we have communities so entrenched in our culture and story that we know from our grandparents can tell us, and that oral tradition is not broken, how we take care of the land. Some of us, myself included, grew up in the city, very disconnected from my mother's tribal community. We just have to remember it in our DNA. We just have to sit out somewhere in nature, think about it. What's the strategy? And the strategy almost always is to return to the context, principles, and natural law of the earth and universe, which is only take what you need. And if you have to take more than you need because the infrastructure that's been built by colonialism demands we take more than we need, plastic bottles of water on every table, take the least of that and do the least of that is absolutely possible. So I like to say that colonialism catches two-legged people in their mind off of something called rights. And don't think I'm against rights. Like I said, me and my wife have had to sue these projects for human rights violations. I get the rights. If there's any lawyers in here, I get that conversation. It's the infrastructure that we're dealing with now. But we didn't know what that was before colonialism. We didn't say I have the right to do these things. We said I have the responsibility. I have the responsibility to take care of my siblings. So my dad could go hunt and my mom could go prep or whatever. However it worked in that community, in that culture. I have a responsibility to take care of the other kids around me. Maybe not my siblings, but we're so close. I'm not gonna not look out for those kids just because their parents are off taking care of business. We had responsibilities to take care of that drinking water. We had responsibilities to take care of that soil quality so that those seeds would live a good, healthy life just like we do. We had responsibility that even if we were a hunting society, we don't wipe out that whole herd because it deserves longevity in future, right? And so a lot of our strategies we would take from the eldest of the herd. We leave the pregnant ones, the young ones. It's a big oral story in my culture about how the nature helped us to hunt. Like when we were just hunting everything in sight, we couldn't actually get anywhere. We were missing and arrows were breaking off the trees. But when we actually listened to nature, it said, look, when you see that pregnant deer, that pregnant elk, let her go. You see that young buck all tough, putting his, he'd be a nice catch. Let him go, because he's gonna have the next generation. When you see that old elder buck kind of like lived a happy life and he's kind of done, he will actually slow down and let you take him because he understands that you're only taking what you need and you're letting the rest of his family go. So getting back to those, that's just one story you tell children. So when children grow up hunting, they're not taking more than they need. They're not snuffing out the light of all the things in the environment. What was the question directly? I know I've got a tendency to go different directions.
You mean the sustainability?
Sustainability, that is sustainability. So you gotta understand, you got the small colonial concept. And the colonial concept is large. We've all grown up in it, right? Boarding school, all that. We've been fed, conditioned to the colonial concept, but the colonial power is small. It's a handful of people with way too much money and not a lot of responsibility in their heart, right? And they are running this deal. And then there's like agents of them that are kind of just stuck in this machine, like they gotta have a job. They gotta have a retirement. They gotta get their kids through college. Things that we all have, right? Even in our poor communities, we want those things. We want educated children. We want healthy children. We want emergency resources, you know,
How do we do that? When,
we model responsibility over rights, in my opinion. So what the indigenous people and let's say his community, the rainforest protectors, what the Maori, New Zealand Maori folks, the river and water protectors, you know, I can't think of all the examples. We met so many. What the reindeer herders, the Sami people, up in the tribes of Europe, indigenous tribes of Europe. What they do is they just do the right thing and model it and model it and model it in hopes that some of these lower colonial agents just trying to get by team up with maybe scientists and see that that's the right way, team up with maybe lawyers and see that that's the right way, indigenous rights of nature, inherent rights of Mother Earth. There's all these words for it, but it's the same concept. Simply recognizing the inherent rights Mother Earth always had. It's kind of like people took for, you know, when we let atrocities happen, like enslavement of whole peoples, like we really crossed that spiritual universal boundary because humans at one time could not be enslaved because they were born with an inherent right to be free. Somebody got in their head, no, we can take that, make people forget that natural thing, and we can have an enslaved population. So when we could learn to do that to ourselves, we got desensitized to enslaving parts of the land, enslaving water bodies. Now we're like poisoning oceans, right? The hugest, the most important water body of the whole grandmother Earth. So it's like we desensitize. So all we're trying to do is say, remember the natural laws and natural rights, if you're gonna call them that were inherent to everything upon creation. These things always had rights. I mean, as a matter of fact, to prove it to yourself, go to your river near you in your neighborhood, and if it's flowing that way, go up there and say, I demand you, I bought you, and I want you to flow that way. I paid good dollars for you, go that way. And if the river does it, man, you're more magical than me. But those are inherent rights. The creator created it flowing that way. Now I could go there with my Tonka trunk and I could break up that river and I could throw my pipeline in it. And I can actually now, technology wise, force it to do something different. But what happens? The flood happens. I've destroyed natural flood protection. All the houses I built on it, knowing better, if I talked to an indigenous person that was indigenous to that land for hundreds of years, they'd have told me, don't build up there. We get a big rain and all the houses are floating down. They didn't listen in North Carolina. They thought they knew better. So now my brother had to send funds to these poor people that just rented houses or maybe even bought them on the floodplain when the big major flood happened. So it's kind of common sense, but I know it's not because we're fighting this small, irresponsible, greedy, addicted money factor. And they are putting out marketing of the opposite of everything that makes sense. They'll put it on your commercials, they'll put it in your phones, on your emails, on your TikToks, on your Twits, on all of your IGs and all that stuff. They will put it on everything and say, this is the way, we gotta make a buck. We gotta tear down all these 3,000-year-old trees and turn them into houses. And then plant these little ornamental trees that have no indigenous value to that landscape. Those seeds don't even remember that land. If you think about your environment as equal to you, the actual trees where you were born have seed dating back thousands of years, just like you have grandparents dating back thousands of years. You go snatch that out and you say, well, I'm gonna go to China, get a nice little ornamental and put it in front of this complex I got. For one, it's a baby, it has no flood protection. For two, when it actually reaches that magnificent elder age of like 200-300 years, like the trees were cutting down as a commodity, it's not gonna do the job that creation intended that seed, that lineage to do. I kind of speak these things as simple because when I talk to kindergartners, when I talk to elementary school students, when I talk to my nephews and nieces that are not of the age of of being swayed. They understand this so clearly. I talk to grown adults and they go, but we can't do that. And I go, what's this can't? I've been telling my children since they were little, there is no word can't. Our stories talk about two-leggeds flying. Our stories talk about two-leggeds living on water for season after season after season. So maybe they were water breathing. Our stories talk about so much miracle of creation that we don't even believe anymore. Well, maybe we don't have that magic anymore, but we filled it up with concrete and technology. Maybe we killed that magic. Maybe we just don't have those powers anymore, or some of us, because we distracted ourselves from believing. So I would say can. Can't is not a word. We can. All we gotta do is influence these people, and it's a small bit of them. Are they gonna freak out? Because what, a zero comes off the 9-0 figure? Yes, but you know what? Get over it. They want us to get over genocide. They want us to get over histories of enslavement and poisoning and bombs and violence and torture and trafficking, and you just name it. And they want us to just get over it. Just go to work and you can work it off. Stuff all that trauma. Forget it happened. Forget it happened not only to you, but your great grandparents. And go out there and get a buck. Maybe one day you'll be like me. I don't want to be like that. So if I have anything to say to this room, don't want to be like that. Please. Don't want to be like them. Be part of the solution. Be part of the only take what you need. And if you got excess, give it to some folks, because there's some folks that need some. There's an imbalance. There's a lot of folks that would love some of that extra that you have laying around the house. And that's totally sustainable. It's recyclable. Did I answer the question?
You did a great job, thank you. Thank you for filling in, so, I thought about this, I did not introduce myself. My name is Dr. Crystal Cavalier Keck, and, I'm a citizen of the Occaneechi Band One Nation, and I live in North Carolina, and, this is my husband. And we co-founded Seven Directions Societies, and through our partnership with Stan, I'm in home education, and that's where I got my first introduction to the United Nations, to where I was actually working on water, which really, like water goals, sustainability, how we were going to protect the water. And we were actually introducing a bill into the state of North Carolina called Rights of Nature, Rights of the River for the Whole River, because we were fighting against the pipeline, the Mount Valley Southgate pipeline, and it's been 10 years, almost 10 years now since we started this fight, but we've held a tribunal, international tribunal, and this week or tomorrow, with the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature Guard, they're holding a judges assembly where they will make a decision from the tribunal that we held last year. And so we plan on moving that decision forward, that they, find that the pipeline is guilty, but they're going to explain more about it tomorrow. Because we are really here fighting for the rights of nature, because it has to have this Western term that Jason saying rights to it, because that is how the United States and the world is just looking at things as rights, not responsibilities. And so when we were deciding to do this, trying to figure out how Indigenous people can get in the United Nations and actually have a say, because when we went to the General Assembly forum, what I actually saw was a lot of corporations that were there at the United Nations, like Coca-Cola and Nestle, and a lot of these corporations have been doing a lot of harm to Indigenous nations. And so what I saw was, it seems like the nation is being bought out by corporations. And so we have to make a little bit louder noise. And so that's why I said, okay, we're gonna have to make noise loud enough to get heard. And so the United Nations came out with this sustainability development goals to commit the world to ending poverty, protecting the planet, and ensuring peace, and prosperity by 2030, but yet the indigenous people who steward 80% of the world's biodiversity are often excluded from the very decision-making tables that shape these goals. And this exclusion means sustainability frameworks, risk being incomplete, extractive, or harmful because they ignore the lived expertise of the people most directly connected to the ecosystems. Because when you live in your community, you know what is happening in your community. And so you have to ask the people on the front lines what's really happening. And that's why I'm seeing here now at Climate Week, when they have this big climate week, like the New York Post, the New York Post and the New York Times came out with what's happening here, but are these people really speaking for what's happening with these extractive industries? And so I was like, we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it. But the paradox is government, corporations, and international institutions often rely on indigenous lands and knowledge to achieve sustainability, whether it's through forest conservation, water protection, or climate resilience. But at the same time, indigenous peoples are frequently sidelined. Their treaties are ignored, their consent bypassed, and their governance systems are undervalued. The paradox is clear: we cannot meet the global goals while maintaining structures that marginalize those who already hold the solutions. But the deeper challenge to this is the question isn't just about inclusions at meetings, it's about sovereignty, self-determination, and power. So achieving sustainability requires shifting from treating indigenous people as stakeholders to recognizing them as rights holders with governance authority. That is what we're gonna have to do. And without that shift, the SDGs risk becoming technocratic checklists rather than pathways to real justice and ecological survival. So the question that I asked earlier I want you guys to reflect on our own roles. Are we reinforcing systems that exclude, or are we opening space for indigenous leadership? But we have to be able to explore concrete actions, from funding indigenous-led work to aligning with laws with indigenous governance and embedding reciprocity and responsibility into sustainability frameworks. When I worked for the United States Government General Services Administration, I was on their corporate sustainability, their little working group. And I was like, how are corporations really being sustainable? And what I really saw was a lot of greenwashing. I see a lot of greenwashing for a lot of corporations like UPS, Amazon, Lidl, which are warehouses in our own community of Mebane, where I live. They have the largest warehouse, the largest Amazon, the largest UPS, the largest Lidl warehouses. And what they're doing is just simply greenwashing, like saying that they're being corporate sustainable, but they're not. They're not really being sustainable at all. They're using the most clean water, and what we found out is the cities give businesses clean water while they give the cleanest water, while they give the citizens like recycled water. Like, I want clean water, but I'm getting recycled water. The recycled water usually contains a lot of chemicals, a lot of hormones. It contains a lot of genetics, PFAS, whatever these corporations are dumping into it. And when you get a filter, a carbon filter only filters out just a certain amount. If you don't really invest in a reverse osmosis system to get rid of PFAS and genetics in your water, you're drinking just toxins. That's why a lot of people are developing gastric, GI cancer, esophagus cancer, any type of cancer. And then there's a lot of endocrine disruptors that is in our water. So if you don't know what's harming you, just don't know. So I'm telling you, test your water. But again, to recognize that true sustainability can only be achieved when indigenous peoples are not just present but leading the decision making. So that is what I wanted to talk about. And I just want to really thank, so you have to tell Nelly about if she's coming tonight, I'll see her, but just really thank her for giving me the end to start this. And Nelly from
And then too.
and Alex too, but she really gave it to me, like she was like pushing me to get there. But without learning this next level of indigenous Like, how can we get in and influence? Because we are not being heard at the government level. We're not being heard, now under this political administration. They have rolled back every clean water thing, any environmental action that has happened. And so we're really gonna have to come together in unity. All of our isms, like, racism, classism, sexism, all of these isms are gonna have to come together. And we're gonna really have to start fighting back, and I believe we're gonna have to take it underground. Because they are so taking away our freedoms, our freedom of speech, our freedom to gather, to protest, whatever our constitution says, they're really taking it away. Yeah, Jay, I don't know, the stories that I just heard from you and Alex, they just really remind us that Indigenous peoples are not simply stakeholders, we're rights holders, and our governance systems already embody sustainable features. So now we're gonna kind of go into question and answer. And so I don't know if we have any questions or any comments from the web, but, does anybody in the audience have any questions or comments or anything?
Hi, my name is Mary Mahoney. I have a not-for-profit over in Light the World, and I work in Nepal. Alex, you're gonna repeat. And the associates, lucky, from Nepal as well.
Were you guys just down the street at the guard meeting?
We're at the Global
You
Alliance.
guys at the guard meeting up the street?
There was another person, oh yeah, I was thinking, so
Okay.
yeah.
We saw you there.
They're like, but.
Could you say the name again of the organization?
Women Light the World.
Thank you.
This is such a huge global issue. And, our organization has attempted to really, educate and empower women as solo entrepreneurs, and looking to do it, what I say is a woman's energy revolution, a global revolution to train women in climate change and all of these issues. But where do you begin in the United States? Let's say, forget about other parts. I mean, every meeting we go to, right, there are different issues, communities are talking about all of these issues, but how do we start? I mean, I live in New York and I work in Nepal. And Lucky lives in Nepal. When did we begin? Forget about Nepal, right in our backyard. I shop from Amazon all the time, and I'm hearing what you said,
Yeah,
and it's so convenient. I just press a button, and I don't have to think about what's coming to me if I need it. So it's a easier life, but where do we begin? I mean, everybody, friends, family too. It's a big question. I don't know if there's an answer.
I don't know if it's the answer, but I do know that we have got to start. I believe we have to start locally, right? Start educating people, because that's how you grow a movement, right? When you start educating people and talking to them, I don't know, look at how the president got he started local, right? And he was saying things, but you really have to get to the hearts of people. And you really have to start going to people who I believe are, the only time people will make a change is when they have a tragedy. So like when they're sick, or their grandparents are sick, or somebody in their family is sick, will they only start to listen? Because that's how we were able to change the hearts of the people in the pipeline. We talked about, have you developed any type of cancers? And then secondly, when the other pipeline started coming through, we started talking about eminent domain, and these corporations are taking their land and just trying to tailor it to that group, because we know that they really didn't really care about the environment, but they really cared about their property. So we kind of have to shift the words that we're using and know our audience, but you gotta start somewhere, and I believe in your backyard, but go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I love everything you have to say, Jason. So let me start with Amazon. I live in Sunrise, Florida, so it's Broward County. And it's close to the Everglades, so I live very west. And they had a community event that I just saw in my community. And they bought some land. And they wanna put a big Amazon warehouse, right? And speaking of greenwashing, so they do a PowerPoint presentation and the guy's very good. He's like, and we're gonna do these bike lanes and we're gonna do these trees here and make this playground for the kids. And it looks really good and we're gonna provide jobs to your community and that's true, they'll provide some jobs, right? And then the activists that were there were really good. And apparently the guy was ready for them because they had a previous meeting and the same dude was there.
Yeah.
And when I walked in, he was already kind of like saying, hey, come over here, let me tell you like what they're gonna do, right? So he's like prepping people already before the meeting. And then they start asking questions like, okay, so all these Amazon trucks, do they have a schedule during the day when they come in, or is it 24/7? 24/7. Is that year round, 365 days a year? Year round. So I'm thinking as a member of that community, right, I'm like, oh my God. So we're gonna have trucks 2 blocks from my house, in and out to the highway, right? For the convenience that you pointed out. All right, so I'm not saying Amazon is evil, okay? I'm not saying it's, but there's gotta be a different way to do it, and they are greenwashing. So the other question, how do you reach people? Well, I think, at least my vision in Eating Sen and our board of directors and our leaders has never been about we're a regional network in the South and we're just gonna work in the South. No, we're a regional network that has reach everywhere, right? So for example, we go to international meetings because if we don't speak for the South, for our communities, nobody's going to. If we're not seated at the table, then they're gonna go ahead and negotiate on our behalf and we're gonna get the short end of the stick. All right, so you work at locally, state, regionally, nationally, internationally, at different levels, and you form alliances and coalitions. All right, now how you reach people is you reach people at the habit level. All right, so habits, as I understand it and as I've read it, and I know my own habits, so they're based on your beliefs, but not your belief, what you think you believe, but your beliefs in your subconscious. Right, so if you're a smoker, right, you have the habit that after you have a meal, oh, I'm gonna have a smoke now, right? You understand? So the way you change beliefs, all right, is first of all, what Jason said earlier, you model them. So I can't tell you not to do something and then you see me do the same exact thing. This happens all the time. All right, so first you model it, and then you meet people, like Krista said, where they're at. All right, how do you do that? You don't talk down to them, you don't condescend to them, you don't judge them. If people feel judged, not only do they not move to action, but they move to oppose you. Because nobody wants to feel judged, right? So I think you need to talk to people and widen the tent. Jason mentioned poor white people. All right, it's a constituency in this country that I feel really terrible for because they've been misinformed for so many years. And I'm talking broadly, right? And they don't vote their interests, okay? But what's the other side doing for them? What are other people doing for them? That's why I think we need to broaden our coalitions and understand that over 70% of the population is concerned about climate change. Yale did a study that 79% they did a poll in May, 79% of registered voters believe that the US should be in the Paris, 80% of the, it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans.
Was bipartisan.
Completely bipartisan, everybody understands something's going on. And I can't cuss here, but okay, there's one guy. He's like, you know what, y'all, I'm starting to believe this climate change shit is for real, all right? So, it's, yeah, the proof is, it keeps happening.
Yeah.
So what I would just say is that because you live here, this infrastructure is very difficult, right? Most of these communities that are protecting the last fresh water, the last rainforest, the last, they are in nature, they're immersed in it. What I would say is, we need these, like, no one's gonna take down all these, skyscrapers that cost them whatever zeros to build, right? We need the people, there's a lot of money generated here, a lot of influence generated here, and a lot of working people here. If the working people just stop for a week, a whole lot of stuff would happen. So what I would say is, for your youth, you gotta actually get them in nature.
Yes.
Cause it's hard to go in a classroom and say, the water is your relative, the tree is your relative. These four-leggeds and these winged animals are your relative, and they're in the classroom, and then they get on the bus and go to a building, a park, go up in an elevator, and they see it on cartoons, maybe, but it's different. So, helping those programs and actually get the youth, and not just the youth, adults need to see this too. Adults need to be in nature to understand the responsibility to nature.
Right.
And then that's how you start talking to these folks, well, like, you know, I'm always having this thing with people about the infrastructure of how they live. And, oh, we're in a hotel by the United Nations. It's actually harder for us to get out in a Uber and go get the food and grocery shop it, or even if we walk it, coming back with bags like this. It's actually easier to have one of those bike dudes go to the thing and bring it to our door. Here in this infrastructure, not at home. At home, we're in the rural. So we had to understand that, like you were saying, you use the Amazon because to not use it, you probably,
But I never used Amazon before,
Oh.
before COVID.
Oh.
I'm somebody who likes to touch and feel.
it's like once they gave you the convenience.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
shopping, you know, I need something and I get into it.
You
My
can't
friend
rent
of
it
mine
elsewhere.
said,
Yeah, you sure can't get stuff.
I mean, those stores where you used to go are not there anymore, so it's a whole thing.
And not to continue on with Amazon, but you know, the vitamin that I buy in my local store that I love is charging 19. And yet the same vitamin at Amazon is charging like 9 or 10. So what am I spending money to support I want to,
Yeah.
my local pharmacy, or am I supporting Amazon and my pocket as
Right.
well? So anyway, I'm sorry.
No, I think it's fine. This is a conversation we need to have. And
These are the hard conversations. They're gonna be hard conversations, but so I would say even more than that is the talk, the way we talk, because a lot of your neighbors are probably talking with that defeated, like, well, this is just the way they made the world.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta go make a buck. I gotta go have my wife picket fence. And it's like, they made the world this way in maybe 2 centuries. We're talking thousands of years human beings got by, had healing centers, had doctors, had health, medicine, had religion, had anything that you can get today. And you know, they always say, well, you know, a lot of people that are anti-indigenous because of whatever racism was educating them, say, oh, we may have conquered you, enslaved you, and genocided you, but now, like you say, you could just get any kind of medicine. You got a headache, it's like, no. What you had then might have been harder, took longer, but guess what? One individual didn't go out and have to do it. You had your whole community. You put up your structures, you got all the food, everything was done by a whole community. Do you know how quickly that was done? You think whole communities had to work 8 hours a day, 6 days a week? No. They had time to teach, philosophize, look at stars. Where do you think astrology and astronomy came from? Came from indigenous people that had a whole lot of time to just look at the stars in peace. Without like, oh, I gotta be up at 4, so I gotta drive an hour, cause I gotta get my cup of coffee. You know what I'm saying? No, the stars are right there. My house is right there. My bed is right there. My sister, my cousin, my grandma's right there. Oh, tomorrow we gotta get up at sunrise and knock out some stuff for about 2 to 3 hours. Okay. Then, all the kids, let's go swimming. Let's go learn how to shoot a bow. Let's go, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you gotta get their language away from impossible. Your neighbors, you just gotta be like, but what if it was possible? But what if we could actually do some debts to stave off climate change? And then you gotta tell them the reality. The Earth's gonna be here once we destroy it or not. We'll destroy the surface of it, where we can't breathe the air and we die. Guess what? Grandma's gonna be rolling. She's still gonna be turning. We need to do this for self-preservation. If you're one of those educated people that has become selfish and only thinks of self, talk to those people on self-preservation. Talk to the people who still got a connection to their heart on sustainability and future and next generation and beyond this. You know what I mean? And none of it is easy.
Excuse me, I have a question. In Nepal, there is an indigenous group. They are still living in the forest and they are moving from one place to another, right? And what do you think like about your basic rights for the education, health, and the clean water? Because sometimes they are having some, influenza or maybe like malaria, so the children are dying, the people, or the people. So that's one of the people is how can we balance that? Either we live in their own situation or we should support them to bring them into the civilization, civilization. So what, like, how do you say it?
But is it a capitalist government?
Sorry.
What is the government
The
structure?
government just fell, not much.
I heard something about that,
Just, yeah,
but before that, what was the government structure?
the government is not doing much, because sometimes they are coming in the festival time, they ask something and they will go, government, they give something. But sometimes it is too cold in the winter, so sometimes people do, the NGOs or some social organizations, they go and give to some holdings or something, but.
But it's more like charities.
Yeah, so, sure, still, they have their own language or, so I really, it is so,
I understand what you're saying.
Then,
Well, I said, I don't know, you know more than me, cause you're from there. But when I hear that a population that's still in their original ways has some new thing like malaria, it makes me think that somebody introduced something to their environment. And it doesn't have to be like they went into their forest and dumped the poison on the ground. They started using so much chemical here that the wind just blew it over here and it seeped into the water.
Like the mosquito.
yeah,
It's-
very.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just seems like,
So we have repercussions of the harm that we
yeah,
produce, chemicals. She was talking about the PFAS. If you don't have this reverse osmosis, because corporations get the cleanest water, they actually use clean water to frack to make these pipelines, this frack gas. But your citizen, they give you recycled water that has the sewer water, they put it through a filter, but it's still, all that stuff is in it. You don't get the freshest water.
so I think with Nepal, you said the government just fell.
Yes.
So I don't think we should I personally, if I could go live in the mountains and be away from civilization, like this colonial stuff, I would do it in a heartbeat, just go back and live naturally. But since I live in this modern world, and the people, we should protect the people that's in the mountains, that's not, civilized, or, what we call civilized, right? We need to change the government and the systems to respect what they have, because they have some of the cleanest, purest places. And the harm that we're doing, because we're living in this capitalistic government and we're in this rat race, we are continuing to harm them because they are pretty pure. Like, they still live with these principles that we are trying to teach people to get back to: respect for the earth, respect for each other, living in the natural world, only taking what's needed. I think we need to protect those people. I don't know if they're mountains or,
But
where they are. but-
That's why I asked if capitalism is in control, because we have that on this hemisphere in the indigenous north and south, is that, rights wise, those people should be protected first, because they have something pure. But if you can't get the extractor or the poisoner or the polluter to understand that, then like you said, they're gonna be vulnerable to the diseases, to the water poisoning. So, yeah, that's a deep question, and I'm not gonna try to have the solution here.
Yeah,
But if you ever can convince your government for outside like discussion, other indigenous groups should be on that discussion.
yeah,
Cause other indigenous groups will say, yes, there's a way to preserve that, maybe give them something for the diseases that you've exposed them to, which is just being a good, if I got you sick, then I deserve to help you with that sickness, right? But not just, oh, you need to come out of the forest and join us in this polluting. It's just disrespectful, you know, yeah, I would say get other indigenous leaders and wisdom keepers on that conversation. If it happened in my community, that's what I would do. I'd reach out to some of the wisdom keepers that I've been blessed to make acquaintance to.
So I will just say the one thing, so we have our Yeaside Water Manifesto, right? We came up with this as a way to affirm our perspective on the governance of water. So the United States contains the water, so groundwater and surface water, right? And then the aquifers. We are bound, like our waters remain bound by unjust systems from the 19th century. US water laws, and I mean, I'm in a federal water course right now. And it is just terrible how they control the water, how they like take the rights away and control it and say, this is property, and we'll take water and divert it to different places and.
Well, one has a drought
Right.
where the water exists, another one's.
And the framework continues to deny and suppress our indigenous water rights and claims. So the thing is, we're calling for a revolutionary approach to water governance. Because again, spaces where radical thought, indigenous resistance, and spiritual law guide how water is protected, restored, and respected. And so we must build our own infrastructure free from reliance on the US government. So I'm just saying here, for relying on the United States government so that our communities have a stable, self-determined supply of clean water. Because again, that is how we're gonna be able to change these things. So that's our water, yes, our water manifesto that we give to our community. Because it's the only path to safeguarding clean water for future generations. So, is there any on there or?
There's a comment about if indigenous people from the continental US and Alaska wish to submit comments about the proposed roadless area sales. The comment period is not yet closed for indigenous nations. And there's a specific NGO agency with that works with indigenous groups and nations to comment on the roadless proposal.
Yep.
So.
They put that in the chat?
Yeah.
Tell Brandon to save that
To
comment.
copy that?
Yeah,
Okay.
And maybe wanna
yeah, we can share it out.
share that out.
Yeah. So yeah, so our other speaker, Nellie, I don't think she's gonna make it, but
She's in the UN.
she is in the United Nations right now. And I do know that President Trump is coming tomorrow to speak in the United Nations. I don't know what he's gonna say. I'm gonna be shocked probably. But tomorrow we will have our talk about rights of nature. It's in this district, whatever this Garment district. It's the Garment district, so it's around here, but we'll talk about rights of nature, what we're doing in North Carolina, but as well, we're gonna talk about the resistance from Appalachia to the Gulf South. Because the pipelines are coming all the way through, and then the LNG exports. And then tomorrow night, we'll be with Grandma Casey talking about indigenous led resistance to fossil fuel.
How can I get the invitations?
It's on our website, 7 Directions of Service. So go to events, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. But thank you so much for being here, and I will take any comments, feedback. If anybody wants to work together, let me know, because we have got to build up our movement in alliance spaces. So thank you so much. Can you get in?
Sorry.
Can you get in?
Yes, I can.
Oh, my brother, for recipe.
And Brandon saved the comment.
Okay.